Hey y'all, how you doing? Another episode of Howling with the Wolf. You guys know the deal. Fire away any questions. I've got maybe 10 or 15 minutes this week. I gotta head to Titans practice. So fire away. We'll talk about the Colts game this week. Titans lost against the Steelers last week, and whatever else you guys want to talk about. So the craziest stat to me, obviously I'm a little new to Titans land, but just the fact that the Titans haven't won at Indy in 9 games. I know they broke the last streak last time, and the fact they've never won at Lucas Oil and they haven't swept this season series since 2002, that's incredible to me, just knowing how long those streaks have lasted. But they have a really good chance to end all of that this week. So I think this is a game where everybody's eager to see how they'll respond. I talked to a few Titans in the locker room Monday, and they used the word upset and frustrated to describe their performance against the Steelers. I think everybody expected it to be a show-me game, and they didn't show the world anything positive about this team. So I think that this week will be interesting. I think this is a game where they're a better team. They have a really good chance to show that, they can bounce back from the Steelers game, be a playoff contender, and correct some of their mistakes that they've shown on offense. So I'm excited to see. I think secretly, or low-key, I think this has the potential to be a blowout game for the Titans if they play how they should play, play in 4 quarters. And we'll see if it actually ends up being that way. So let's get to it. Logan says, when can we expect Taylor Lewan to get on one of those jet sweeps? I think about the same time that you see Sly Williams going ahead taking a handoff from under center from Marcus Mariota. I know Taylor Lewan got the touchdown not too long ago, but I don't think the jet sweep is in his game. I think we learned, if you guys watched the Seahawks Falcons game, that little shovel passes and little sweep passes to long snappers and offensive linemen aren't really a key to success. So I wouldn't be expecting that anytime soon. Who has been the most underrated player on our defense? Joe wants to know. Well, Joe, underrated. What do you determine as underrated? Because to start the season, I would have said that the answer was Kevin Byard. But I would say that a large number of the Titans fan base now knows who Kevin Byard is. I think that the country is starting to know who Kevin Byard is. So I don't think he is underrated any longer. I think that, I'll say this, I think Adoree Jackson has made more progression than any player on the Titans team from week 1 to not now as a defender. I've been really impressed on him. I thought he was shaky coming after that first game, and I thought, okay, how long is he going to be able to last as a starter? But the last 5 or 6 weeks, I've been really impressed on how he's really solidified himself as a playmaker, getting his hands on the ball, obviously playing on offense and special teams, but his defensive technique has been really good. I think that he's going to be a really good corner for a long time, and I think soon Titans fans will recognize him for more than just his defensive play. So I think he's another candidate for that. Underrated. Logan Ryan's been playing really good ball, you're right. I don't know if he's underrated because I think he's a guy who made cornerback one money, $10 million a year. So I don't really know that he's underrated. Carl Klug, I think you could say that he's come on strong the last couple of games. I think he's coming back from that Achilles. And I thought he had a really good game against the Steelers. So, yeah, you could put him on the underrated boat. I think I want to see him piece it together a little bit more. He didn't show a lot in the first month of the season, but he's coming on strong late. So, yeah, I think he would get a vote for most underrated. Yeah, I think you can have that one. Let me see. Who else would I consider underrated? I think Derek Morgan's having a quietly solid year. I think he leads the team in sacks. Jarrell Casey, he's not underrated at all, but he's having a really good year. That whole defense, they're having some really good players having a really good year on that defense. So, good question, though. Let's see, Chris. Do you think Mariota will have a chip on his shoulder? Well, he said that he has a sour taste in his mouth, so I think that he should have a chip on his shoulder. I think that he's often the guy that he's often the guy who. Hold on one second. Yeah, he's often the guy who keeps calm regardless. He's the guy who's gonna always be even killed. That's really what makes him who he is. But I think as a competitor, you have to want to be better than you were before, particularly when you throw 3 interceptions or 4 interceptions in a primetime game. You want to show the country, you want to show your team that ultimately you're not that type of player. And I think that he will. I think this will be one of his better games, just me being predicting. And I think he'll show that, hey, last week was a little bit of a anomaly. It's just a bad game. So I'm eager to see how Marcus plays this week. But I do think he'll come out and play with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. Do you think Mariota needs to call more audibles? I think that he has that responsibility. Malarkey said that he doesn't really do that as much as you may think as far as switching from run to pass. I think he has that ability, but he doesn't always utilize it. So if you're saying he needs to call more audibles, you're saying that you're assuming that you don't like the play. And I think that I know there's been a lot of criticism for the play calling, but I think a lot of it has been execution. And I think we look at play calling, and that's often the easy excuse when things aren't going right. But I don't know what Marcus, the scheme is the scheme. So if you're switching it from one play, there's not a special playbook that Marcus has that they're not utilizing. I don't think that that's what's going on. So, I think that there will be more responsibility, more of an open playbook for Marcus as he continues to get rhythm and continues to get that hamstring 100%. But I don't think that, like I mentioned, I don't think there's a secret playbook that they're not utilizing for Marcus. Let's see. Haven't heard much about Sims. I think he's solid nickelback type. Sims has become that cornerback 3. The reason you haven't heard as much about Sims is because Adoree Jackson and Logan Ryan have been playing really well. And in another sense, they've been playing the type of football where no noise is sort of good noise, particularly with LaShawn Sims, because he hasn't been flashy as far as his ability to make plays, his ability to get a hand on the ball, but he has been pretty solid. He hasn't got beat outside of that Antonio Brown play where he did get beat, but I think he hasn't been a huge liability over the last 6 weeks, which is a good sign for him as a number 3 corner. Lewis, besides the stars, who needs to step it up on offense and help turn this offense around? Offensive line. I wrote a story on ESPN earlier today, and you guys can check it out, basically saying that the Titans' next challenge is to reclaim their 2016 reputation, because this was a unit that a lot of us thought was going to be a top 10 offensive line coming into the year. Really strong on the bookends with Taylor Lewan and Jack Conklin. A lot of times late in last season, they were demoralizing teams with their nastiness, their physicality. But so far this season, it hasn't really been the case. They've given up 12 sacks in the last 3 games. They allowed 2.5 yards per carry over the last game against the Steelers. They've already given up 25 sacks this season through 10 games, and they only gave up 28 in total last season. So I think there can be a lot better play on the offensive line, starting with the interior of the line, from Quinn Spain, who had a rough outing against Pittsburgh, to Ben Jones, who kind of got beat a little bit against Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, and then Josh Klein, who a lot of people look at the weak point of the offensive line coming into the season, and I could argue that the other guys have been playing just as inconsistent as he has. So those guys have got to play better. Jack Conklin's even been up and down. He hasn't had his All-Pro season that he had last year. So I want to see those guys become the physical bunch that they were, because that's where the offense starts. It starts with the offensive line. You got to be able to run the ball, and you've got to be able to maintain your leverage as offensive line and technique. So I talked to a bunch of them in the locker room. I talked to Taylor. I talked to Jack, and they're all thinking that they can turn this around. But I think as they turn it around, the offense will start to turn it around. I'll answer a few more. I've got to go to practice. They're starting practice in a few minutes. So thank you guys as always. If I missed your question, circle back through and see if I answered it. I'll try to rapid fire and try to get through the rest of these before I go. As always, follow my work at Cameron Wolfe on Twitter, at ESPN. I love doing this with you guys. So let's see. Quick fire. X factor for the Colts game. Rush for more than 4 yards a carry and over 150 total rushing yards. I think the rushing game will be big. Got to get it back on track. No way to hold T.Y. to one catch again. Always nervous. Yeah, you're probably not going to hold him to one catch again, but I think they did a really good job defending him the last time they played. So I think you implement whatever worked the last time and hope that the Colts haven't changed up too much. Andrea, knowing that you're new to the Titans ESPN coverage, do you have any input on the offensive regression? I know the rage is to say that Marcus is regressing, but what about the O-line and running back? Yeah, I may be new, but I've been here for 4 months, so I think I've got enough insight to know what's going on the team, and I would agree that it's not all on Marcus. Like I mentioned earlier, the offensive line hasn't played up to his standards, and that's supposed to be the core of this team. So I think that Mike Mularkey's putting the challenge on them. I'm putting the challenge on them. I think it starts with the offensive line. Running backs are also missing some holes. Coaches could scheme and call plays a little better. But ultimately, I think the offensive line is the start of the turnaround for this offense. So I like to see better play from them. Do you think Pittsburgh game has any negative bearing on the rest of the year? Other than they didn't get a win and they didn't show themselves as a true contender on national TV, I don't think it's a huge impact. I still think that they're a playoff team. They're not championship contenders yet. But I think they're still in a position where they can make some noise if they get into the dance. So I think it may give them some positive motivation. I don't know if it's negative bearing other than sort of highlighting some of their issues. Least favorite call of this year, as far as calls, I'll say that play series right before half against the Steelers. I didn't really get calling a timeout. And then coming out and having a 3-and-out on offense. That wasn't a great offensive play calling series. I'll answer a few more. I've got to run. What's the major you choose the best route? There's no best route as far as beat writer. My route is going to be different than your route. Honestly, I'd say meet as many people as you know, intern, network. I know everybody tells you that, but don't take any assignment as a easy assignment. It's something that you can't do. You got to tell that story better than the person next to you. If there's 5 people in the room writing about a story, what can you write about that game that hasn't already been told or that the audience hasn't already seen? Think a little bit out of the box, find your niche, and be utilized as far as a TV talent, as far as a written talent, and someone who can be prevalent in digital and social media. Those are all the new waves of journalism. Let's see. Thank you. Best effort in all 3 phases. Coaching staff. I think the coaching staff definitely treats themselves as accountable. I think some of it's player execution, some of it's coaches not getting guys ready to not make mistakes. So I think it's a dual purpose blame, and that is all. So let's see. Last one and they'll go. Do you think Henry should be a workhorse? I think they both can be utilized and be effective in the scheme. They both can play better and the offensive line can, but I think, maybe some more runs for Henry, maybe some more catches for Murray, but ultimately I don't think they're going to shift too much of what they do in that rotation. All right, thanks guys. Catch you later.